Yeah. I'm assuming that is why they're here. Madam Clerk, are we clear? We are. All righty. We'll call this meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. If you'll please join me in a moment of silence where you can pray, meditate, or just enjoy a moment of silence to yourself. Thank you. If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we'll move into the public comment portion of our evening. We have one person signed up, Mr. Brandon Olson. So if you'll just say your name, your address, speak clearly into the mic, and your 3 minutes will begin when the clerk's ready.
Thanks, Christy. Brandon Olson, 33 Stony Brook Court. Wanted to share with everybody, we had a great opening day on Saturday. It was well attended despite the cold temperatures. Appreciate the mayor coming out, throwing out the first pitch, and it's great to see all the kids out there having a good time and families cheering. It was really exciting. We got 2 months of baseball to come, and look forward to seeing all that to come. We took in over 400 pounds of non-perishable food items for Calvary Food Pantry, in addition to almost $500 in cash donations. So it was a big success, and we want to thank the public staff at Parks and Rec. Those fields looked exquisite. A lot of comments on those, and it was a great event. So, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak during public comment? All right, we'll close the public comment period. We're going to approval of the minutes. Council, any corrections, additions, or deletions to the minutes presented? Hearing, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Make a motion. We have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those approving the minutes say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to updates from council, if there are any.
No, just checking to see if anyone's attending the Partnership for Economic Development Investor Update tomorrow. It'll be tomorrow at 12.
I'm attending that.
Okay. I think it'll be really interesting, and I'll be glad to report back how it went. Yeah.
We'll look forward to hearing back. Thank y'all for going. Any other updates from council? Hearing none. Moving on to the consent agenda. Any questions, comments, concerns related to any item on there? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye. Aye. And those opposed, no. Ayes have it. All right, moving on to our discussion items. Item number 6 is the presentation on the recently completed paying class study. We have Mr. David Hill here. And the floor is yours, Mr. Hill.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
And thank you for being here.
Yeah, electronics and I do not do well together. So as soon as I know I'm going to hit the wrong button, I hope you've got somebody on staff who can come and get me out of this mess that I've got.
I'm sure somebody will come home.
Well, I do appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. I've been working with the town staff for the last number of months, working on what's known as a paying classification study. So I'm here tonight to briefly go over the highlights of it. I think you've got a copy of my written report. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have regarding that report or anything I'm going to present tonight. But as I go through, for the most part, I'm going to be talking about the process and procedure, the methodology that makes up a paying class study, the process that I go through, and the intent, the purpose of the paying class study, as you can see from the first slide, is to determine where the town believes their proper positioning should be in relation to the geographic market. And the intent, the purpose of that placement in the geographic market is to properly position you for employee recruitment and retention. The first thing I do each study that I work on, Heather at the very beginning of the study sent me an employee census. From that employee census, I establish some benchmark data, and that helps me understand, or at least gives me a picture of what the workforce looks like at the beginning of the study. My definition or my view of the world is a bell curve, standard deviation. If the sample size is large enough, whatever element in that workforce that I'm measuring, if the workforce and the sample size is large enough, and if the workforce is a mature workforce, and we'll talk a little bit about that. My definition of a mature workforce is that you have an average years of employment between 8 and 10 years. And if you have a mature workforce, again, whatever element it is that I'm taking a look at, I should be able to find about 2/3 of your employees in the middle 1/3 of this bell curve. Now, my apologies, before I go to the next slides. I cannot recreate a bell curve on my slides. My slides look like St. Louis arches. So my first St. Louis arch is a distribution of employees by their year employed. Now here again, when I take a look at the average years of employment, I'm looking at, is this a mature workforce? Is the average years of employment between 8 and 10 years? As you can see in the bottom left of that slide, your average years of employment was over 8 years. So by definition, you've got a mature workforce, but when you look at that slide, when you look at the bars on that graph, you'll see that the tallest ones, the majority of your employees are on the left side. So you do have an average years of employment of more than 8 years, but you can see that you've got over a quarter of your employees have been with you less than 2 years. And you have over 40% of your employees who've been with you less than 5 years. So, mature workforce, yes. However, the majority of employees have been with you a relatively short period of time. And those are represented by those high bars you see on the left side. Now, when you look at those bars, that's a picture of your workforce as of the date that Heather sent me that spreadsheet. I can tell you from years of examining historical data, if you looked at this same chart 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, that tallest bar will look like those shorter bars to the right. That's just historical data. And what this also represents is the number of employees who came to work for you in each of those calendar years who are still here, or who were still here at the time of that spreadsheet. So what it does not show is the number of employees who came to work for you in each of those years. So it could be that each of those years would have that high bar. But over the years, of course, there's been that loss of that reduction of workforce. The next slide takes a very similar picture, how long employees been in their current position. And here again, you can see that the majority of the bars are, again, over on the left side, the majority of, the average years of employment in their current position is a little over 6 years. And that actually is a pretty good number. But again, just from the chart by itself, you can see that you've got the high bars over on that left side. most of your employees have been in their current position a relatively short period of time. Now, bringing those two charts together and then looking at this chart. This chart takes a look at employees and where their salaries are in relation to the minimum salary for their assigned pay grade. So for each position is assigned to a pay grade. And each employee who is in that assigned pay grade, this measures where their salary is as a percentage above minimum. So as you look at that, your current pay grade range is 48.2%. What that means is that your maximum salary is 48.2% greater than the minimum salary. Looking at that bottom left, you can see that the average percentage above minimum is about 15%. So you've got a range of 48%. Looking at market data, and I'll talk more about market data in a couple of minutes, but this chart reflects the first two charts that we looked at. You've still got that average years of employment of over 8 years, the mature workforce, but you've got a considerable number of employees that have been with you a relatively short period of time, been in a position a relatively short period of time. This chart is a mirror image of the first two charts we looked at. Employees haven't been with you long enough, the majority of employees haven't been with you long enough, or have been in a position long enough for their salaries to have advanced across the pay grade range. So this chart is just telling me that salaries are very commensurate with length of employment, time, and position. Measured against yourself, because what I'm doing, I'm taking a picture of your workforce. And this is just measuring yourself against who you are. This is not measuring you against the market. We'll get there in just a couple of minutes. This is your current pay grade or your pay plan. As I said in the other chart, the range is 48.2%. And the differential that I look at, and as you can see from this chart, you start off with a 4.77% differential from the lowest grade to the next highest grade, and then as you advance through those grades, that differential becomes greater. And I'll just go ahead and jump to the next slide, because this is my proposed pay plan and would become one of my recommendations. This pay plan extends your range to 50%. It's not very much, just moving it from 48.2 to 50%. What it does is it creates a consistent 5% differential from one grade to the next, instead of having compressed differentials in your lower grades and greater differentials in the highest grades. This creates a consistent differential from one grade to the next, whether you're in the lowest grade or the highest grade. So what we'll take a look at now is some of the market data. I'm certainly not going to stand here tonight and go over every one of your positions. I've selected one. We'll take a look at it, and I'll explain the information that's on there. But the geographic market. From this slide, you can see that geographically, those are those local governments that each of your departments compete against every day. Could we have added some additional local governments to that? Certainly we could have. Should we have a discussion about who should be on there, who should not be on there? Absolutely, we could do that. But this grouping of local governments that you see gives us a really good variation of some larger local governments and medium-sized and smaller ones. Because what I'm looking for is to get a very good look at what is the average geographic salary for each of your positions. Whether that's manager or clerk or police officer or any other.
May I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
Which one of these would best parallel to our population range?
Well, that I cannot answer.
Okay.
I know
I'm just
Wolf is-
curious.
Yeah.
I thought maybe Black Mountain, but I don't know.
I know,
So Wolfen's pretty close, aren't they?
I know Brevard's pretty close.
Probably Transylvania.
In Black Mountain, those would be the two closest in population, if you're asking. me.
Brevard and what else?
In Black Mountain.
Okay. I just think that that has some bearing, because if you have a whole lot larger population, it's a lot more employees or more, more work.
Yes, and that's a discussion I have at probably every presentation that I give. But again, what I'm looking for is, what is that geographic average salary for each of the classifications? And just to get into some detail, and I certainly don't want to speak for any of the department directors, I certainly don't want to speak for Mark or Heather, but should we include Asheville or not? Well, if you ask the police chief is going to say absolutely. He competes against Asheville every day. So those are difficult decisions, who to include. Should you include only those who are just like you? Perhaps. But then again, when you take a look at who your competitors are. And the reason I take a look at the geographic market, numbers of studies have been done. Greater than 90%, probably greater than 95% of your employees will not move, will not relocate to another part of the state of North Carolina to go to work for another local government. What they will do is drive in a different direction tomorrow morning. Any of the local governments that you see on that slide, any one of your employees, you probably have some employees who drive past those local governments on their way to work here. So what's important in the studies that I work on is the geographic market and getting a good cross-section of all the local governments that are in that geographic area. Each one of your positions, each one of your classifications has a worksheet very similar to this. And what this worksheet does is takes a look at that particular position, that unique position. And this is police officer, but it could be police chief. It could be manager, it could be clerk, it could be any other position. Every one of your positions has a worksheet that looks similar to this. But what this is doing is all of the information above the blue line from each of those local governments is the pay grade range that they have this particular classification in. So from that information, you can see what the minimum salary is, the midpoint, the maximum. And you can also see what the average salary is for each of their employees in that classification. And then further to the right, I take a look at the range. What range do they have? You can see that Asheville is a very short range. But that's because they've got a pretty rapid or aggressive advancement. They bring employees in this particular classification, a pretty rapid advancement, then they quickly move to the next classification. The next highest classification, police officer. I take a look at CR. CR in this worksheet stands for comp ratio. That's just what's that relative positioning of salary to the midpoint. And I use the word midpoint, but the better term is market value. Technically, in paying class studies, the midpoint is the market value. That's where you should find the salary of an employee who's been in that position 8 to 10 years. So I take a look at comp ratio. I take a look at percentage above minimum. These are just some of the other items I take a look at when I'm comparing your positions to the market position. Below the blue line, immediately below the blue line is where Fletcher's grade and range is for this particular position, as well as the average salary. And then below that, you can see how I break out different classification measurements against everybody above the blue line, or just those against the municipal governments, or just against the local governments, or the county governments. And then for a position like police officer, and for most of your positions, I take a look at primarily the overall average, because again, I'm looking at that overall geographic average salary of each position. And then I'm taking a look at that column on the left that you see 3% as being the column heading. All of the information that I collected from all of these other local governments was correct and current as of the time they gave that information to me. From cost of living, consumer price index, in conversations with other local governments, I'm projecting that on average, all of the local government information that you see above that blue line is going to increase 3% on or about July 1st. So then my target becomes not what is that pay grade range now, but what is that pay grade range advanced or forecast 3% greater on or about July 1st. So in this case, the minimum salary, the overall minimum salary for this particular classification with that forecasted 3% would be about $47,000. So then I'm taking a look at, okay, the position currently is in grade 64. If I'm recommending that you stay with your current pay plan, what is that pay grade recommendation that places this position with a minimum salary of about 47? So here, it's just a movement from grade 64 to grade 65, and then moving to grade 65 places that minimum salary at $47,000. So we're just going to look at this one sheet tonight, but again, every one of your positions has a worksheet that looks very similar to this. And it's from this data, from this analysis, and viewing and interpretation of this data that I make recommendations on what pay grade assignment each of your positions should be. Now, before I talk about recommendations, and in my report, I talk in more detail about methodology processes. But I've been working with the staff for a number of months. I could only be here tonight with the information that I'm presenting had it not been for the cooperation and assistance I received from Mark and Heather, and certainly all of your department directors, but more importantly from all of your employees, because there's where the burden was placed. I conducted employee meetings, and in those meetings, I talked to them about the importance of completing what's known as a position description questionnaire. That's 12 pages of employees providing information to me in more detail about everything about their job, everything they do, how they do it, what they do it with, how often do they do it, every element. So the burden was placed on your employees to make sure that I'm successful standing here tonight. And I can tell you that your employees did an excellent job. Great leadership, department directors did a great job. I met individually with those. But again, the burden was on employees to make sure I understood what their job was. So recommendations, and again, in more detail, you can see these in the report. If you take a look at, my first is to adopt a salary administration philosophy statement. And I provide an example in the report. But that's very similar to a vision statement about who you want to be, who you are. This is like the third leg of that identification of who Fletcher is. You want to be the greatest, you want to be this greatest service provider to the public. But who does that? Who accomplishes that for you? Certainly leadership, management, it's almost 50 employees that you have are the ones who deliver those services day in and day out. So this is a statement, a position statement about how you would administer salaries and take a look at market data and so forth. The next one is a market-based salary administration practices, and that's where you keep a very close look on the market. You look at minimum salaries, but you also take a look at those midpoints or that market value of those pay grade ranges. Where is the market? Where's the market going? How competitive do you want to be? All of those come into play when you're taking a look at that identification of who Fletcher wants to be as an employer. Now, the third bullet here is to adopt a 1/3 or every other year review. This is just increasing the length of time between looking at the market. In the past, and we don't have to look at Mark and Heather here, it's been several years since the last study. What this does is create a process where you're looking at, and all of these bullets all part and parcel of each other. You're more aggressive, you're more attentive to the market, where the market is, what the market's doing. And again, where does Fletcher want to be in relation to that market? Recommendation is to adopt the pay plan that we looked at on slide 9, extending the range from 48.3 to 50%, and having a 5% consistent differential from one grade to the next. One of the other recommendations is to create a career ladder within the maintenance specialist classification. Recommendation actually is to create a 3-level, for 1, 2, 3, would be in grade 61, 62, 63. And management department directors would identify the specific criteria, the specific education, experience, certifications that would be in place that would provide that opportunity for that level of employee to advance from 1 to 2 to 3.
Can I ask a question real quick? With your percentage gaps right there, will that offset any decompression of salaries of anybody? Or do you know that we're going to have to decompress salaries as well?
Yeah, actually, I can always find salary compression.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is historical. It could be because of performance. It could be because a number of other areas. And I've got a lot of formulas that I use to address salary compression if it's really severe. The salary compression that you have, in my opinion, is not severe enough to address it. There are some specific cases that you can take a look at, but then again, you have to look at the historical. Wow, you and I have been in the same position, the same length of time, and I'm making more money than you are. How did that happen? Well, then you have to go back and dig into each time there was a personnel action and try to determine, well, was it because of my performance or your performance or lack thereof, or did you have greater education and certifications than I did? Did you step out and go get those? I didn't. Kinds of things. So salary compression is a very detailed area to start getting into. My analysis of your salary compression was not severe enough to take a look at addressing.
Okay. Thank you.
Next recommendation is to adopt a compa ratio method of establishing employee salaries in the new pay grade ranges. Now again, compa ratio is that relative position of salary to midpoint or market value. And back to the third slide, where we took a look at those bars showing the salary percentage above the minimum for all employees, which is a very mirror image of the first two slides that we took a look at. So all of your employees have salaries at different points along their pay grade range for any number of historical occurrences or events. Again, there's nothing really there driving me in a direction to specifically address salary compression. In my opinion, your salaries are distributed in accordance with or commensurate with their length of employment, their time and position. So this corporational model moves each position to that pay grade, just like police officer we took a look at, we moved from one grade to the next highest grade. What this corporational model does is then it picks each employee up from their current grade, moves them to their proposed grade, sets them down on the proposed grade range at the same relative position to the grade, same relative position to each other that they currently have. So it's moving the positions to the market-supported pay grade range. That's the recruitment part. You're moving positions to that market competitive range. Police officer again, minimum salary $47,000, puts you in a much better place or position than you are now. The retention part is you're moving employee salaries up and moving them and setting them down at the same relative position that they have currently. So nobody's moving ahead of or falling behind anybody right now. Now, there were some positions that moved up more than one grade. And because of the number of grades that some positions moved up, and the relative position of employee salaries and where those salaries would be in those higher pay grades. Two additional subsets of my recommendations is that no employee or no position move greater than 3 grades at this time, and that no individual employee receive a salary increase or a salary adjustment greater than $10,000. And when you get down to these kinds of recommendations, what we're taking a look at is how can we best place Fletcher in the best possible position in the market and be able to fund what needs to be funded in making those recommendations that I'm talking about. And here's where you get into the kinds of little tweaks that you make to make sure that what I'm presenting to you tonight is something that's favorable, certainly to the town, but to employees. And a lot of this can be viewed as the first step in moving forward. And that's back to some of my earlier comments about market-based, looking at the market, determining where Fletcher wants to be in relation to that market and continuing to move. So if you adopt my recommendations, the implementation cost would be what you see on this slide. And of course, these numbers are going to fluctuate. Employees come and go, advance to a new position, get promoted, retire, new employees come to work. So these numbers will fluctuate, of course, a little bit until up to the very moment of implementation. And I'm using 25% as the payroll associated cost, and that's the FICA, that's retirement, that's 401k, that's all those payroll associated costs, will be about 25%. So what you see there on that slide is what the total salaries cost would be plus the 25% payroll associated costs.
I have a question on your pay scale. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
One, two, and so,
Are these titles, job titles, are these already in place for us, Heather, or are these that you've proposed?
So on the pay plan that's recommended, there's the public works maintenance specialist 2 to be added, the public works maintenance specialist 3 to be added. All the other positions are currently on our pay plan.
So like specialist 1, specialist 2, specialist 3, we've always had that?
We've only just had the maintenance specialist.
Okay.
That's what he's, one of his recommendations, to add that maintenance 2, maintenance 3.
What do you think about when we have different departments that are cross-trained or do everything? Like I see, Parks and Rec, sometimes I couldn't tell you who's a supervisor or who's a specialist or whatever. And I'm thinking the same thing with maybe Public Works. I was just curious. That'd be a discussion I'd want to have during budget session, I guess. Because I know we cross-train, and I know a lot of our departments are cross-trained and kick in on many levels.
Yeah, I mean, some of the cross-training or helping out with other duties isn't like a daily thing or real frequent. It may be as we get short-handed in a situation in Public Works or Parks and Rec, or there's a storm event, or there's some larger project, tree removal, something like that at the park, where Public Works maintenance staff would come out and help. But there's not necessarily a lot of cross-training as far as skills.
So we only have crews like that cut grass, or crews that just do the trash, or just crews that work on vehicles.
Well, yeah, there is some specialization like that, and they do help out with other duties, but there's not a tremendous amount of cross-training for specific skills, like, I'm going to say mechanic. We don't have a lot of other people besides primarily one person doing those types of duties.
that could be in our job description too, the extra
Yes.
duties and stuff.
Yes.
I also,
I mean, the whole
Yeah.
cross-training, that's something else we could get into and talk about, but
Right.
it does bring up some challenges compensation-wise, unless we want to make some, like, maintenance-level positions more generic in nature and not focused on duties primarily in one department or another.
It might be something that we need to discuss during budget session, because I know our departments work so hard, helping each other out and just
They do.
kicking in wherever they need to be, and so I think that'd be a good discussion to have.
Okay.
I also have another question on your recommended pay plan. I know it's probably a typo, but for the record, I'd like to add that in there. Is your Parks and Recs director, the midpoint's
It's a
$491,661?
typo. It's a
So
typo.
what's the correct number? Yeah, I'm gonna say, that's a.
Instead of the dollar sign, it's a
I know
4.
Greg would be really happy about that, but.
I saw that.
So I guess for the notes, for the record, it needs to be,
Yeah, I know.
I guess, strike the 4 off of, I'm taking it.
I'll fix that.
Okay.
He's good, but not that good.
We've been doing a lot of proofing, but I tell you, some things get by.
That's okay, let's just make a note on that, so.
Yeah, that's okay.
I know Greg would love that, so.
That's what we do.
Yeah, that was wishful thinking.
And so if we're doing a 3-grade cap, we will have the opportunity going, well, that, I'm assuming that means there are folk that go beyond the 3-grade cap in theory. So I guess Heather or Mark, will we have the opportunity to continue to progress those folk up as we go through the years?
Yeah, I mean.
If I'm understanding that correctly, if you get what I mean, if there's a 3-grade cap, are there people that would have went beyond that?
I mean, and David, maybe you could explain more of that. We just tried to, as we're updating this against the market, not have such a dramatic jump in grades that, I mean, a couple things, cost to do that. Does it appear too much of a jump in grades? I don't know if there's any other comments, but those are just some of the factors. And then remember, if you do this periodically, you get another opportunity if that position appears to be in too low of a grade to advance, whether it's 1 or 2 or that max 3. But it was just not to have such a dramatic jump.
Understood.
And there's there's an issue then with other positions too, how one advancing too much or what might appear to be too much.
So I guess we can discuss it more, I guess, for the recommended, the funding of $214,000 during our budget workshop, see if we can absorb something like this.
Yes.
I guess that's where we need to probably improve it. But personally, I think that we've been talking about this for several years, and I'd like to thank everybody for all your hard work in doing this. I think we got some of the best employees in Western North Carolina, and we need to make sure we take care of them and keep them. So, like I say, thank you for that.
Agreed. Well, what other questions or comments do we have? Sorry. Go ahead.
Just to follow up on what Trevor had mentioned, and thank you for those comments. Yeah, this will be a part of the budget process. Bigger picture stuff, we're working on our revenues, finalizing all of our expenses, but this is very high priority. I'll just say for myself, working on putting a budget together, and Heather doing a lot of work on this as well, that this is something we're making a priority, if you approve this to implement it, because it does move our employees, it does make us more competitive in this market that he's analyzed. So it does help to achieve some of those things and improve people's pay too. So,
Well, I'm glad this is happening. It's well needed. All righty, any other questions, comments? And I guess we'll be talking about this as the budget moves forward, sounds like?
yes.
Okay.
And if y'all are comfortable with this, I don't know if you take action on that, we'll move under that assumption to try and implement this.
Okay. Do you need any action from us this evening? Do we need to?
Yeah, I mean, if you
To
could.
approve the plan?
If you could approve that.
Okay.
And that would be helpful.
All righty.
Approve the plan.
Yes, sir.
Well, I knew you were talking about that, but,
It's the whole plan, I think, what you're talking about.
yeah, I don't know if I'd want to approve it. I thought that we would be discussing during the budget. I mean, in other words, when you approve it, you're telling
approve it
me
as
that
like a-
you're ready to move forward as it's laid out right here.
Yeah, I'd be moving forward with the assumption that we're trying to fund the recommendations that are in this plan, in the budget process.
If there's tweaks needed, we'd be able to make the tweaks.
Yes.
Okay.
So basically,
What,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, with that being said, if we're able to make the tweaks going forward in the budget session if needed, then I would suggest that we go ahead and approve this. Because I think that might have been what you were getting at, if we were, and I don't want to misrepresent you, but if we were able to make changes going forward.
No, I appreciate it. I would definitely, would only want to approve it if we're open to making changes to it.
You can always make changes to it at any time. I think it helps to get a good direction here that this is,
But we want to
this is
continue
the
to move
plan that
forward.
we, yeah. And again, everything that's in here has been based on that market comparison to our market area with our positions benchmarked in there, and using that compo ratio to move people, keep them moving towards the midpoint as much as possible. I think that I'm explaining that correctly based on your analysis. So I mean, that's the results on this.
So basically, we're just talking, clear real quick, we're just going to vote basically to just move the plan into the budget section, and then we can edit the budget. I mean, this is a plan if it had to, depending on the budget.
Yes.
So we're just saying, just to move it forward.
I don't want to discredit any of the work that's been done. It's a massive amount of work, and I really appreciate it. And I understand market analysis, but I just definitely want to dig a little deeper. And I have full intent to, it's like Trevor said, I don't know that we can ever compensate departments for the work that they do, but we sure, every year we try to do it justice as much as we can. So, of course, my intent would be to do something along these lines. I just am not quite sure that's set in red for me. So if we can move forward with some adjustment, I'll be okay with that.
I mean, if we need to adjust something, we will. I mean, but this is the recommendation within the work that's been done. So, I mean, you can by consensus, if you're comfortable with this, the results, we move forward with that assumption that that's what we're going to try and budget within this upcoming fiscal year.
Well, what would be more helpful for staff? 'Cause I'm comfortable with making them, or asking for a motion.
I could make a motion of moving this forward, moving this over to the budget workshop for discussion and with the latitude of changing if needed.
Is there more, I mean, are you wanting more details on this, or what's?
Is that not a good enough motion to move forward?
Yeah.
Okay, then I would
Okay.
second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the ayes have it, motion carries. And we thank you, sir, Mr. Hill,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather.
and Heather as well, thank you. All righty, moving on to item number 7. We have a discussion on the potential grant resources for the Cane Creek Greenway extension. We have Ms. Rebecca Robinson from Conservative Carolina, and we thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me back.
Of course.
So if you reference your map, you'll see that we're talking about expanding the Greenway toward I-26 and Coach Broad River. And there are now 2 state grant opportunities to do that. These are non-recurring programs, meaning they're only here once, as far as we know, unless the legislature changes things. So they're not going to be here next year or for the foreseeable future, as far as we know. They are both capped at $500,000 and both require 1-to-1 match. That doesn't all have to be cash. For example, there are landowners who have offered to donate trail easements to help expand the trail, and the value of those easements can be counted as part of the match requirement. Where they differ is that one is a much smaller program with a much more limited pool of applicants, and it will not pay to pave the trail. It's going to be gravel or crushed stone, but not pavement. Whereas the second one is a much larger pool, $25 million is available, but any town or county and some nonprofits can apply for that one. The first is due in May, so come right up, and the latter is in September, so we've got a couple months there. In terms of the very specific budget for the project, you know, we have to get into starting to write the application to get down to that level of detail. For example, we would want to get appraisals for the trail easements to find out how much match that's worth. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? And so we will be pursuing both of these grants if that was the will of the council, correct? Well, I am,
I can help pursue them.
sure.
We need to know by to do the grants.
Well, the first one, the smaller program is due in May.
No, I'm sorry, I said it on top.
So you need to know now?
Yeah. The other one, we have a little bit more time, it's due in September.
Well, we need more time to think about the other one, I guess we have that, but in the short term, well, I'll say I'm in favor of both grants, but In the short term, we're certainly in favor of the one with the May deadline.
And that would actually connect this one actually state to trails. It says,
Right, so it's a little bit interesting, and that's another way that the applicant pool is very limited. There are 14 state trails in North Carolina, and one of them is actually the French Broad River. So the fact that you're working toward the river, and you don't have to get all the way there in one sweep, you just have to be moving in that direction. That's why you're eligible for this.
Just
program.
make an effort.
Yeah.
so this grant here, you're talking about connecting to the state trail outside of city limits, or town limits. I'm guessing that's what you're talking about.
Well, again, you don't have to do the whole thing all the way to the river, you just need to be moving in that direction.
Right.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Broadmoor property is in the city limits, so you do have a connection to the river. It's kind of a patchwork, but
We have that connection.
I mean, quite frankly, if we go after both these grants, these two aren't going to get us that far. It probably, the extent's going to be onto the town-owned property by Meritor. And that's where it's going to, I mean, realistically with this amount, I mean, maybe if we get both, maybe we get a little further. There's the whole issue of the bridge too, the expense, if we have to do the bridge or not. And that's why, I mean, we'll talk about this later. I've got that legislative kind of project list our legislative delegation to see if they can help identify other sources, so.
And both of these grants are to go towards the same Cane Creek Trail, correct?
correct.
I personally like to focus our, town money inside the town, if that makes sense. Going outside the town limits, got a little rub on that myself, but that's my opinion. And I guess what's the advantages of connecting to a state trail versus not connecting to a state trail?
It's just an eligibility requirement for this program. Now, the Henderson County Master Plan for Greenways proposes a greenway that parallels the river, so you would be connecting into the larger county system someday at that point.
But in order to be eligible, we need to be working towards that. That gives us that opportunity.
Right.
Barry, did you have something?
I just want to interject a couple of kind of more zoomed out points, just to kind of from our previous discussions amongst Mark and Rebecca. And we've always had a great working relationship with Conserving Carolina, largely on the trail that we do have. It's been the only way we've gotten anything done except for one federal grant a while back during the recession. This particular trail that we're talking about, it doesn't really get into disrupting any, it's not going to involve really complicated right-of-way acquisition for like residential folks. The larger plan, zooming all the way back out to 20 years ago, kind of looked at this larger trail connection eventually from our park to this Meritor property. In our first days here, we were never really talking about state trail connections or going out to the river or anything like that. And in my mind, that would be a bonus someday. But these grants that Rebecca's talking about are kind of more small, as you mentioned. They're only one time. The funding sources that have largely been available in the past that have been difficult to pursue are it's getting even bleaker. Anything involving formerly known as enhancement money from the state, which is part of the federal highway stuff, it's STP. It's how we funded our corridor project on 25 and way back 2010. It's how we funded the portion of Greenway that goes up Cane Creek to the railroad trestle. We've learned that funding source is programmed out through at least 2029. We spoke with Tristan at the MPO a few months back on it. Funding sources involving spot prioritization. Those are very bleak. We're coming out of meetings very recently. Mark and I attended a recent meeting with Henderson County folks about getting new projects on the list. But we recently at MPO meetings, TCC meeting, we're learning that we're going into the current round of spot funding with minus 75 million in the hole. There's just not going to likely be opportunities for any real substantive grant money in the future on this. So in my mind, we got to seize every opportunity we can get. The reality is that we get one of these, you know, we're going to then be able to get at least a foot in the door as far as a east-to-west connection, some form of connection of Greenway from east side of town to west side of town. That's kind of what I'm looking at with Fletcher blinders on. Yes, there's the opportunity to stretch it out to the river, but quite honestly, that's going to be a long time coming.
And that's why we needed, just one other quick thing, we need to be lobbying our legislators. I just got contacted by some of our federal delegation folks from Senator Budd's office and Congressman Edwards. What are your top priorities? And that list I sent to you, that's part of this list, we're going to be talking to our state delegation folks, which is, you know, Representative Balcom and Senator Moffett. And I'll be sending that to them shortly if I can get some feedback from you all on that and anything else we might want to add. But we need to push those because greenways are real important in the state. And so people are going after them more, but we need to state in our case for wherever we can get help. And that is one area of help, if there can be earmarks in the General Assembly funding or the congressional, to get money in place to do this. Because we need some big chunks. This is a smaller chunk in the scheme, but to really make some meaningful progress, like the Acosta Trail, for example, they had, you know, they got major federal funding in there that, and did a good job at getting that together, and that's happening, and that's going to be huge. So.
And you have multiple private landowners who are willing to participate in it right now, and that's, you know, that's not there forever. Ownership changes, anybody could decide to sell or have to transfer for some other reason, so you want to get that done while you have everybody at the table.
On the smaller grant, is there a minimum distance that we have to go to qualify for that, just as long as we're under 25,000 population?
That's right.
So if it could be a half a mile or 3 miles, it wouldn't matter, it's not a,
That's correct.
yeah.
I think they would look at the overall, you know, cost of your project versus other folks that are applying based per mile, but there's not a specific amount you have to do.
Is it usually pretty competitive, this grant?
Well, these two opportunities are new. They were funded by
Okay.
the legislature as part of the Year of the Trail, which was 2023 in North Carolina.
So it's brand new, so we don't know yet.
Compare.
So the smaller mountains, looking at the map, that would apply to the, I guess that's pink or purple trail? You can do that same route?
Yeah.
Starting from the park? and
There
then-
are a couple different ways to get there, is how I'll put it, in the different colors. And what we're looking at, the preferred alignment is the pink, pink-red alignment.
And that money right there can start from the park, and as far as we can go out to, toward the French Broad, if it stops at midway point or three-quarters point, and that's where you can use that money too? Okay.
Yeah.
So that would have been in town?
I like that.
So it sounds like we're at least okay with the grant with the deadline in May?
I am.
Okay. And what are our thoughts about the other grant with the application deadline in September of this year? I mean, that'll be right around the corner pretty soon here as well, so we, if we don't want to make a decision on that tonight, we might want to continue to think about it, have this conversation maybe next month or the month after. I'm not sure how long it takes you all to write the grants.
It'd be nice to have a solid month plus, for sure.
Okay.
It'd be one thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Once again, there's no restrictions on that, the larger grant, with just money to use it as far as we can. Yeah.
And I guess my question would be, a person like to kind of wait and see a little bit, because it's, your other grants are awarded in the fall, and you got applied in September on this, and will we know if we get grant awarded on this, I hate to get awarded for both, I mean, great if we get awarded for both, but with the amounts, you don't know what you're asking for and everything, because if you get one, you don't have to ask for as much as on this other one, but vice versa, if that makes sense. When will you know that we,
Yeah,
that,
all they've said is fall for now, and I will say because these are two of several new grant programs, and so they're having to get staffed up, and they haven't always been meeting their proposed timelines with some other programs, I was saying.
So fall could be winter.
They could,
I mean, if they're similar, I mean, are y'all comfortable if we approach both of these? I mean, they're going to be similar applications.
I don't mind myself thinking about the September, we still got some time on that, and switch you over.
You do.
with it.
So what's our reservation about the September Greenway? I'm not sure I quite understand.
It depends on how much you're going to be asking for too, and how far you're going. Again, I have, personally, I have issues spending money outside of town, myself. And that's just me, in my opinion. If town people put money, I like to keep it inside the town.
I get that. However, when we did the survey, I think like 89% of residents said they were okay with the Greenway going outside town limits, if I'm not mistaken.
These two grants, if I could just get clarification for y'all. So the Connecting Communities to State Trails grant that's up to 500,000, that's including the match, the local.
That is the grant award.
That's the grant award, so then could be matched by 500, so that's $1 million, if you got it all.
Yeah.
The 100,000 to 500,000 for the Great Trails State Grant, that's a $500,000 max award, and then that has to be matched 1-to-1, so that'd be another, so that's $2 million right there. I can just tell you, based on the estimates that Equinox Environmental did, and that was a year or two ago. We had it updated, if you remember, we had a discussion a couple years ago. We're in the, to do paved trails, we're in the 3 to 5 million range. And that's not going outside the town limits. That's going out to the extent, I don't know if it gets to 26, but I think it's just shy of that. Plus, we may have to zigzag back on the town's Meritor property, because we can't go into the conservation easement from the stream restoration work they did. So I could just, realistically, even if you got all this, and it's paved, we aren't going to go, the likelihood of going beyond that is slim. So if that gives some, and if it wasn't, I'd say wait on it, but just to give some perspective on this.
Yeah, like you said right there, that'd be $1 million, and I know like our last meeting, we talked about trying to spend money on our current trails. Most of the people be using our current trails back here, it needs to be paved. That's another thing I'm thinking about as well. We're dumping all our money on one spot right here, and that only probably a small handful of people are going to use, but we got a whole park back here, it needs to be repaved and take out, we got a lot of gravel areas, so I hate to dump all our money in one spot and not be able to use it over here. That's another thing, that's the reason I was kind of throwing it out there, but if we got awarded, that would take up $1 million right out of our fund balance right there, just for that over there.
Well, it's not an either-or thing, right? And we do have funds elsewhere, because we still have the 2.6 million from ARPA that we've designated for capital projects.
You got over 2.6 million, it's for ARPA. And
in theory, if we wanted to, we could use for this.
It's designated for capital projects, that's over 2.6 million, and you've got 8 million in fund balance. But right now we have an undesignated fund balance or unassigned as of the end of the last fiscal year. I want to say it was over 6 million. So between the capital project designated monies that was freed up because of the 2.6 million and then our large unassigned fund balance, there's plenty of resources there to consider this.
Well, would it benefit to look at the first one and see where we end up budget-wise? And revenue-wise for this next budget that we're looking at?
Yeah. Yep.
Again, I'm still concerned about the overall upkeep and maintenance, and I want to
Sure.
make sure we
Sure.
get what we need to maintain.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a good point, because in this upcoming budget, you had the request for additional full-time maintenance position in Parks and Rec. And I think once we cross that road, leave the park and start heading west there and going along, the King Creek, it's gonna get enough to maintain, and it's gonna push us over that threshold. So that's why I, had those numbers together for you, kind of what would be the net increase, which is about $50,000 with the personnel and some other incidental expenses, and then probably those UTV vehicles.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing council correctly, it sounds like we're comfortable pursuing the Connecting Communities to State Trails grant, but we maybe want to take a pause on the Great Trail State grant. Am I representing the perspective correctly?
At least next month, I guess.
Yeah, at least a month. Does that?
So we can come back if you want to discuss it, maybe by July, if we need to, on the second one. Is that okay? Okay.
And if we decide to do it out, you say just needed a month, probably?
2 months is great, so July would be
Okay,
ideal.
sure.
I guess this is the other question to Mark right here. Say I know we turned this in our legislation, and we got approval for, what we want, and we got approval for the grant. How would that look? How would we play that out? Got approval for the same thing, one through the state legislations, one through the,
I mean, you could turn that, for sake of argument, if you got all that, which I want to be optimistic and say it's all going to happen. In a perfect world, you're probably not going to get everything you're looking for. You could turn down the grant that you've been accepted. I know people who apply for grants don't like that because then it looks like.
I figured you use your card, and that's, next time you apply for it again.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
You never get another grant.
Yeah, it can hurt you in the future, so.
Yeah, it does.
But that is a scenario where you could do that. If let's just say we're able to identify a large source through General Assembly assistance, which we really need to put that ask out there,
Yeah.
because this is, we're probably going to need to do a bridge somewhere along there, and that's what really pumps up the cost on it,
I
beyond
agree.
these grants and needing some other source of assistance.
Eric, did you have
I was
something?
just going to add on to what Mark's train of thought was, and that, even if we're wildly successful and somehow got both of these grants, we're going to end up spending it mostly on our own town land, I think. That some of the complexities involved with this, that we're not even talking about, we don't want to get too deep in the weeds on it, but involve backing up. If we're focused on the town-owned Meritor property and a little swath of Charlie-owned Sirocco piece, and, with pointing towards the interstate, there would be the need at some point to back up under Highway 25 and the railroad tracks, which is complex, going across Fernley, which there's other complexities that Rebecca's dealt with Fernley Fund. And then, ultimately too, down the road, if we ever do extend under the interstate, there's going to be, as Mark mentioned, the need for another bridge, because, we're on the south side of King Creek. Rebecca's group is going to be working with Broadmoor on some stream restoration, and we'd be able to work with them, but that's going to involve a bridge. So all that said, just to convey that, the need to work with the legislators could involve, possibly even a tag team approach between the town and the county, because it could be, something that's designed to meet up with a trail that's going to the county. And folks with the county getting ready to speak the other night, that they worked hard to get easements along the believe the Taproot property to get the trail along the French Broad River on that. That's in the vicinity of where we'd eventually be meeting up. So working with legislators would be hopefully for a bigger pot of money that could start tackling the more complex pieces of this that we're not even getting into with these, what I call very small pocket change grants. So not to suggest $500,000 to do that, but in the grand scheme of the plans that we're constructing, it's a lot of little.
So do you need this?
All right, well, I don't think we need any action. It sounds like we're okay with the,
Yeah, I mean, if the general consensus is
Yeah.
okay, we start working on the first one. we can
yeah, we'll come back in July for the
Rebecca.
second one.
Okay.
So there's no vote need to be for the May?
As long as we have a consensus, we're fine. Rebecca, we thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. And Eric, you too, thank you. All right, moving on to the presentation of transit feasibility study for Apple Country Transit. We have a couple of folk here, I think, from Henderson County.
So,
And thank you all for being here.
yeah, no problem. We're going to get the presentation running just so our folks back here can see it. But I'm Jana Biancoli. I'm the senior planner for Henderson County Planning Department. Hi, Jim.
Hey, how are you?
Nice to see you. I'm
Good to see you.
And I have Lee Stevens here with me. She's our planner 3, and she works on transit as well. So she's going to help give this presentation. But just as a reminder, because it has been a while since we've been in Fletcher, Henderson County owns and operates Apple Country Public Transit for all the municipalities, or 3 municipalities within the county that are within what's called the urbanized area, which is Fletcher, Hendersonville, and Laurel Park. Flat Rock, Saluda, and Mills River are not in the urbanized area. That's why they do not qualify for the transit. So the county provides this on the municipality's behalf. The municipalities do pay into the system. It's a small portion of the overall transit budget, but we still really appreciate it because all of it is very helpful. And we recently did a feasibility study, and I'm gonna tell you about that. This is up now. Okay, so we're going to talk about the overview of the study, the existing conditions specifically for Fletcher, and the recommendations that were specific to Fletcher as well. So the study process, the county hired AECom to do this study for us as a consultant. The Board of Commissioners selected them in September of 2022. From that time until February 2023, the Board of Commissioners formed a steering committee and appointed members. March of 2023 is when we began our public outreach and involvement. And December 2023 is when the first draft of the study was completed. Okay, so public involvement. Our steering committee consisted of appointees from TDA, the Sheriff's Department, Health Department, Police Department from the City of Hendersonville, the Partnership for Economic Development, Blue Ridge Community College, and Carnegie Hospital. We did driver interviews because they're the ones on the ground and have the most interaction, of course, with our riders. And we held 2 sessions with them in March to get feedback on the routes and feedback on how things are running operationally with Apple Country Transit in general. We also held 2 focus group sessions for social services and community leaders, as well as business leaders. And then we did 2 surveys, one for the community at large and one specifically for riders. And we went on the bus and we took iPads on the bus and just asked people to take it. And we did that a few times and got a lot of people to take the survey that way. So where are we now? We received the final draft of the study from AECom in February, and at the Transportation Advisory Committee that the county has, Commissioner Lapsley had asked that we go to all the municipalities that are affected by transit and gather feedback on this final draft before we bring it to the commissioners. And then Lee is going to tell you about the existing conditions. So to start, here in Fletcher, you all have a population of an estimated 7,987 folks, which is about 6.9% of Henderson County's total population. You all have a higher population density than most of the county, and also a higher population of people 65 and older. So Route 3, which serves Fletcher with 6 stops within town limits, is the least productive route. It has a little more than half the ridership of Route 2 and a third of the ridership of Route 1. It has the poorest on-time performance. It's 3 times as likely to have a delay compared to the other 2 routes. And it also has poor connection and poor coordination with Asheville Regional Transit, the ART bus, making transfers fairly difficult. So the graphs here on this screen represent 2019 data, but it still has held true for the last several years since then. Route 3 has the lowest number of boardings compared to the other 2 routes. It also has the lowest number of passengers per revenue hour and the highest operating expenses per revenue mile, and also the highest operating expenses per unlinked passenger trip. So as I said before, Route 3 is consistently about half of Route 1 ridership. So here in this table, we have just this past month's ridership data showing that Route 3 was about just over 1,000 riders, which is about 1,500 less than Route 1. There were also 139 paratransit pickups in Fletcher in FY23, and that's out of about 2,900 total for the county, which is about 5%. And then, once again, Route 3 is more often to be delayed or to miss an entire loop than the other 2 routes. So far in FY24, Route 3 has been delayed 11 times, whereas Route 1 has only been delayed 4 times and Route 2 only once.
Now, is that because of traffic coming off the interstate with construction?
Predominantly
Which is not
so.
going to be an ongoing issue once all that is done?
A fair bit of it is due to I-26 construction and people rerouting, also due to weather or accidents.
Okay.
And I'll turn it back to Jana to talk about recommendations. So the FY19 data that she was showing, of course, that was prior to I-26 construction. Route 3 was done in an hour route, just like the other ones, and it's not an hour route. It's just not physically possible. So we have done an interim fix that's been very positive with our riders, which is changing the service from an hourly service to a 90-minute service. So it's still serving Fletcher, all of the stops, and it includes Advent Health, which used to be an on-call stop, and now it's a permanent stop because there's enough time. Really, the consistency and reliability of the service is what is making riders happy, even though it's much longer in between each stop. It's allowing them to know where the bus is going to be at what time, and before they weren't able to do that, so they weren't able to plan their days and plan their transportation accordingly. So in the recommendations of this study, which I know Mark has given to y'all, the long-term recommendation is to phase out Route 3 because of the poor performance. Route 3's kind of more initial changes would be an express bus route to the Asheville Regional Airport, and that's because it's not just the airport, it's also the connection to the Asheville transit system. It would be 2 one-hour loops during the morning peak period on weekdays, and 2 one-hour loops during the PM peak period of weekdays, so that'd be 6 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 7 p.m. And that wouldn't require any additional vehicles or capital. That's an interim change. A long-term change that was suggested in the plan is to make it if there's positive outcomes, because all of this is based on checking to see any implementations that have been done what is the outcome? Are the riders responding? Is it benefiting bottom dollar as well as the community? And if there's positive reactions to the service, it would become permanent express service. And this would help to become an hour route because they would take I-26 and they wouldn't come on US 25. So I wanted to point that out, that that's what's in this study, but like I stated, the commissioners want to know what each municipality thinks. If stops were taken out of Fletcher, you would not obviously be charged for those stops. You would still be charged for your portion of paratransit riders, which would still be a smaller amount because the area of the 3/4 mile boundary, which is a little more technical, but I can send you a map if you want it, would still have some Fletcher riders, but those costs would be there, but they would be significantly smaller. So I can answer any questions and let me know what you think and I can bring it back to the commissioners.
You didn't have anybody from a municipality on your steering committee, did you?
No, because this is what we're doing now. I mean, they were staff of different, they weren't elected officials, they were staff.
But no municipal staff, I guess, around here? Yeah.
How many routes go through Fletcher exactly?
It's just the one.
Just the one, so if you did away with that one, we wouldn't have no routes through here, is what you're saying?
How many stops are involved in that total?
6.
6 within town limits, that whole route is 41 stops.
And that's doing away with all of it, you're saying?
It would go, just for everyone's clarification, it would only go from Hendersonville, if you did the express route, just to the connection with the ART, with the Asheville system by the airport. It would be, okay.
Right. And the interim would be doing that just 2 hours in the morning. And then after that would be the normal through Fletcher, all 41 stops. And then just the 2 hours at the second peak afternoon would go back to that express. And that's just for those people who are commuting between Buncombe County and Henderson County.
Do we know how many people are going to be doing that, or what the?
So that is the number one stop on the route. All of the numbers come from that stop.
And that picks up and drops off at the
airport.
At the airport itself?
So the airport has 2 shelters, one for us and one for Asheville City, and they're across from each other.
Okay.
And so, am I hearing correctly, that the Advent Health stop would still, in the future,
Yeah.
be there? It would just be okay.
So
In the morning and the evening?
Huh?
It would be in the morning and the evening. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? I'm curious, how do people learn about the transit? Because I was reading your feasibility study, and I saw that there's a lot of misunderstanding about who's able to use it, or how to use it, things like that. So where do people get education from about it?
Yeah, so typically, like, transit is done by a municipality, it's not done by a county.
Right.
And then we also have, like, even more confusion because our contractor that operates it is WNC Source, who also happens to operate a rural transportation system. So that's even more confusion for everybody. But,
Yeah.
it's mostly, it's the social services entities that are buying tickets. I give free tickets to all kinds of organizations, and they kind of advertise the bus system in that way. And then people see the stops, of course. And that's an advertisement in and of itself. We are looking to do an app, phone app, to kind of modernize the system so that you can see where the bus is in real time. Especially when we have flooding in Hendersonville, there's a lot of stops that are not, you can't use them because they're underwater. So having something like that would also be a safety thing, help people to navigate the system. But there's, I mean, we have a website, applecountrytransit.com, but it's kind of like public meetings, you know, you can only do so much.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, sounds good. Do we have any other questions or comments? All right. Well, we thank y'all. We appreciate y'all's work and being here today.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. All righty, moving on to our last discussion item, the continued discussion and possible approval of a contract with Retail Strategies. I think we all got the contract middle of last week, if I'm not mistaken. Everybody have a chance to read it over, have questions for Mark, comments?
I didn't see anything out of the ordinary.
No, I didn't see anything. What, the attorney?
Yeah, and so I emailed you, so I got it, when we get this, Thursday, Friday of last week. So I sent it to Joe Fariquez, our town attorney, and he had an opportunity to review it. And I emailed you all a little bit about this, and he was comfortable with the format. You know, an attorney doesn't get into the deal unless, you know, his opinion or her opinion is the deal looks bad. That's
Right.
between the town and the, you know, the person you're contracting with. But, I mean, I reviewed the format. It's pretty standard language to get, to govern the terms of what we're wanting them to do. The addendum to it's pretty consistent what they say they're going to do based on the proposal. I'm comfortable with it, and that's why I wanted to mention, you know, about recommending it, if you all are comfortable with moving forward. But I also wanted to contact a couple other municipals, city governments, town governments, clients of Retail Strategies. So I reached out to the city of Shelby. I talked to the city manager there, Rick Howell, and I'd reached out to Wake Forest, town of Wake Forest, and talked to the town manager there, and, you know, had an opportunity to, hey, just generally tell me how it went, would you do it over again, that kind of thing. And I had a good, long conversation with the manager, city manager in Shelby. They overall have had a good experience. They're still under contract with them. They feel like they've made decent progress. They do give you feedback. They try and give you honest feedback and not, you know, just tell you what you want to hear on what they think realistically you can bring in. The staff was competent. The only kind of criticism is there was a little bit of turnover, but they do hire really well-qualified people. I did ask the Lidl question, because I know Sheila had a question about that, what happened out there. And apparently the thing that went sideways was the access. And, you know, Retail Strategies doesn't say if, you know, they help facilitate XYZ retailer coming in, they don't work on the deal where they're going to go and the terms of how that works. They're basically a facilitator of analyzing this and then trying to put you in touch with parties, and they've got the contacts with the retailer, and the retailer evaluates the site, developer helps put the deal together, leasing, construction. When Lidl was, I don't remember, is it Lidl or Lidl? Potato, Lidl. So I'm going to go with Jim's, Lidl. So with Lidl, when they were, I guess, finalized or getting close to finalizing the site, the city gave feedback about the access was not the greatest.
Oh, it's horrible right there.
Yeah, and it was like 500 feet from the traffic light, and I think he said it wound up being right in, right out, which I know was like a deal,
Yeah, it
an
is.
issue
Yeah,
here
sure,
with
yeah.
our project, and hopefully whatever next iteration happens there, that it won't be constrained to that, but the city tried to get them to adjust their access to it, and Lidl wasn't willing to do that, and he said it was their first one in North America. find that kind of wild that Shelby, North Carolina would be the
Lynn's
first one.
the first one.
But anyways, that's what they said. But he said it was largely an access problem, why that went, it was unsuccessful. They're still under contract with them. He said they would do it again if they had to do it over again. They've had some success with, landing retailers out there. Wake Forest, they were happy with the experience. They're not under contract with them right now. I'm not sure how many years they did. They were very happy with the analysis that was done, and it did a good listing of the retailers in town and kind of the opportunities for recruitment of new ones. And the manager felt like it helped put them on a more national spotlight for the town for recruitment. And that was kind of the synopsis of the feedback I got from Wake Forest. And just one other thing I want to point out here, before I mention that, I did talk to Albemarle a number of years ago, the manager. He just retired from there. He was pleased with, I remember that with Retail Strategies. They were one of the ones that got quite a few retailers that did land in there. But at that time, I think I might have met the rep that was here back then. But like I mentioned to you before, we were trying to let our developer do that. They were a little less, once you have a developer identified that kind of want to work on their own businesses that come in and aren't necessarily going to let local government get into that minutia of controlling it or directing it, I guess I should say. I mentioned that. The other thing that was good about this was they do look at the whole town. We want our focus to be more on the town center property, and we'll, direct them on it. But they look at retail opportunities throughout the town.
Yeah, that is.
So
That's a benefit.
this could be helpful with the development on Northern 25, they're the one near Baldwin Circle, that's having some struggle moving forward with getting their, getting businesses to commit in there and doing their retail or office commercial. Remember they had the collision center, and that wasn't, that was what planning board was really thrilled with. I don't know if you all were either. So that's, a nutshell of kind of the feedback I got on it. But, neither of those two were like, no, it wasn't worth it, and I wouldn't do it again. So at least I was encouraged by that. And like I said, I have talked, it was probably 3 years ago, the manager from Albemarle, and I was curious, well, did it, and they were pleased with what they were able to produce. So.
Well, I'll say I'm comfortable with the contract. What thoughts does council have, however?
I like the fact that they say they'll work with current businesses
I like that
to
too.
help with that end of things, to make sure we're not
Pushing them out. or
nudging
anything.
out and pushing
Yeah.
out our current
Right.
business owners.
Yep.
And kind of help them further their business while locating for here and looking at the town as a whole. So I didn't see anything.
As long as they know our vision,
Yeah,
Yes.
because we don't need to, I hate to say it, another airport road running down 25.
absolutely.
We already got that a mile away, so.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like they'll,
And that's
they're
gonna be-
pretty collaborative.
That's
Or
gonna
at
be
least,
important.
That's what they said.
That's going to be important on the front end when they're scoping. And I think it would be helpful, not just staff, but maybe, a couple, whoever, it could be all council. It could be in a meeting, I guess, we want to facilitate it that way, but to get the stakeholder input, so
Yeah, I think
they're
all council
understanding
should be
the
involved,
vision,
yeah.
and, it can be maybe a work session item, something like that.
Yeah.
And,
I think even because I saw some photos in her presentation, construction-wise, appearance,
yeah.
to keep us where we want to be. And I think that's important, we all sit down with them and share, so that we don't end up with something we don't want.
Yeah. And remember, when, you know, when it gets down to the point of an actual deal and construction standards, that's something you can weigh heavily in on. Retail strategies won't get as involved in that. That would be more the developer that's saying, okay, yeah, I can work on that project and I can build this and lease space to that retailer. And they might be the anchor or something like that, so.
What other comments do we have?
I think it'll keep us with some realistic expectations.
Yeah.
I mean,
And you can also exit out of the agreement after a year on it, and you just gotta give 30 days notice. So if there's, you know, reluctance to doing a 3-year contract, that is an option from year to year.
Yeah.
Okay, well, are we ready to make a motion to approve the contract as presented right now?
I'll make,
You want to make that motion? Okay, the Jim made the motion to approve the contract as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, ayes have it, motion carries. And let's just make sure on the front end that we are all involved in that conversation. I think it should be at a council meeting or work session, whatever we need to do, yeah.
We'll probably need to bring a budget amendment back for the next meeting to cover this. And we're fine within, you know, our expenses, revenues, current year. Sales tax is a little tight. But everything overall is,
Okay.
I mean, we'll be talking more about that in the new budget. I'm not like gravely concerned about it, but it is going to make a little bit more of a challenge in presenting the recommended budget to you upcoming here. But we'll need to do that to get started with them right away.
Okay.
And at least it would cover us. It wouldn't be something you'd have to budget and then, well, I guess you would at the end of the next budget cycle, but, so. Okay.
Any other questions, comments? All righty, moving on to your report.
Right, thank you, Mayor, Council. Just several things following up from last week. The legislative delegation, so, you know, I was trying to set up these meetings, and I'd mentioned that, I know Trevor had bumped into Representative Balkum and wanted a kind of specific list that could marry up with some of our legislative priorities, and so, you know, like specific projects if we're looking for help with funding. So I did this chart. I did it in the same format that Representative Balkum's office had sent for last year, because I thought it was a good format. It just kind of lays it out. Now, we had 3 projects. I only had 2 on here last year. One got funded, one kind of rolled off because we don't have the specific street improvements with the town center project because that developer terminated the agreement. I thought of one other one, maybe law enforcement related, since I put this together, if you wanted me to add it. But those license plate readers that the chief has talked about.
They might as well, yeah, go ahead and add it.
I mean, I could
Yeah,
put
so
that in here, if y'all are okay with that. And I'll talk to the chief about how I mean, it could be described similar to what he's put in his budget request, but.
that's flock cameras.
Yeah, the flock cameras. So I'll just jot in a note here to add that in. And then I'll revise this and send it back to you, and if you have any other comments. But if you want me to run through it real quick, we've got, of course, the Cane Creek Greenway extension. We talked about the Greenway grants. You know, the estimate from that Equinox environmental study was between 3 million and 5.6 million for a paved trail. The upper end, 5.6 million, is if we had to build at least one bridge for a crossing. So, and I just mentioned in here, we'll be pursuing other grants. Conserving Carolina, I heard from Rebecca tonight, is going to be assisting us. You know, really it'd be helpful if we can get some federal funding in here, but if we can get some help from the General Assembly and our state delegation. we could make a sizable impact in this. And again, remember, we've got really strong fund balance right now. You've got that, even within that, you've got that 2.6 million in capital project designations that was freed up by the ARPA monies. So we're really in excellent shape with that. And then the other one, and I know this is going to take more discussion and kind of digging out all the research we did from before, but the Fanning Bridge Road sewer extension, looking at Westfeld Road, Hudson Lane, Dogwood Terrace. It'd probably be helpful on this too, to talk to the health department, see if we can get some more information about, a little more facts of the extent to which people are struggling with their septic systems on that road, because that would help to be better justification to put that in there. I got updated figures from MSD, and it was 700,000. I did the 700 to 900,000 range, because that 700,000 update that I got from staff at from Metropolitan Sewerage District, or MSD, did not include, there'd probably have to be a easement connecting from like Westfeld Road to South Chase, because that would be the connection to get a gravity connection, if you remember from before. So there'll be some expense for that, and then asphalt repair through there. So that would be another thing that probably bumps up that expense. But yeah, we had about like 50% interest. Of course, that was articulating to the folks that have to pay all, the tap fees, but that's not uncommon. So it's something really strongly to consider, because if we were, the bridge to get the sewer infrastructure in there, that can be a tremendous help to those neighborhoods there. And remember, we're not running the sewer system. If we build the infrastructure, similar to a developer building a subdivision to put sewer in, or a business, it gets turned over to MSD. So we'd have to work closely hand in hand with them to
meet their requirements.
Yes, that's correct. And they might have some other resources in here. I know when I was talking to Kevin Johnson that there's something in there with, if you have failing septic systems, that there might be some potential, some money through MSD to help with that, maybe. But, so that's the other big project down here. I mean, there's others I'm not thinking of. That's why I wanted to float this up with you all. Please let me know or think about that. We can certainly edit the list. I could put the flock cameras or license plate reader cameras on here, and I'll.
I guess one thing off that, with budgets and stuff like that, I wonder if she will need a priority, like, okay, you give me 3 big lists, which one, which 1, 2, and 3 you want to focus on? I mean, I'll probably put something like that on there, so she will know, if you get money, which way, where you want to put it.
Well, where would you all like me to put? I mean, my inclination, but I want to make sure y'all are comfortable, would be the Cane Creek Greenway extension, maybe the LPR readers, cameras, and then the sewer one.
Depending what kind of trouble we're having with the sewer, though. I mean, if they give us, the health department says they're having a lot of issues, that's kind of high on the list. I mean, that's.
Yeah. I mean, we can fund likely within our operating budget that startup cost to buy the cameras or get into the service. That's a little more attainable, but.
Are there health issues there currently that we know of?
2 houses maybe, something like that, I think one was Hughes and somebody else.
I know Hugh Clark's has always been,
Right.
and he's mentioned across the street, people with Hudson and North Hudson and Dogwood Terrace. And I'm saying this incidentally, I don't know which ones, but I think I was talking to Trevor once on the phone about this. If you go further down Westfeld, so it's like coming back this way.
From the turn and coming
Yeah,
back.
because it's a deep street. You didn't realize how far it goes back. There's a bunch of homes back there. When y'all were considering about 3 years or so ago, 4 years, subdividing that property that's adjacent to the auction house property now, so
Yeah, I
you're
remember
facing
that.
that, there was a little section
two
back in
homes.
there, I
Yeah.
think Benny Youngblood
Two
was
lots.
buying
Yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah, I
His son was
remember.
working on, yeah, and I think he wound up not subdividing it, or not, or they withdrew it. Some of the because you had to notify abutters, and some of the residents on Westville were concerned about it because they said the septic issues that they have, like questioning, can they be doing that there? So.
I'd be curious to see how many and who
Yeah.
Yeah,
down through there.
Well,
Yes,
Benny was
I-
trying to increase the amount of houses he was going to put on that land.
Yeah.
Above the limit that's allowed. That's what
right, he was trying to get, a little more bang for.
Yeah, so, but maybe, like you said, the health department might have some kind of answer if they've had complaints or not. Because we
Right.
didn't get a response. I think we reached out to them, didn't we? We've never really got a big response.
There was some reaching, we were talking with MSD. I'm trying to remember how much I don't think there was a lot of communication with the health department when we were kind of vetting this before, considering
Yeah, I don't
our
think so.
project. No, it was with the residents a lot. And then MSD, that was the parties primarily we were reaching out to get more info or interest.
If you remember, what was the question that we asked the residents when we were
Would
talking
you be
about?
willing to tap on, to be interested in having sewer availability and tap on to that?
It was a
Yeah,
low
what was-
number. It was
What was
maybe
the
11.
results? I can't recall.
It was,
It was
You
low.
remember that
they
would-
didn't want
Not
to
like
pay
not-
for it.
not a lot.
They had to pay for the
What was the
connection
response?
from
Well, is it
the house to the
larger
road.
response, because you figure they got a septic system
Well,
already.
some of them
that's
did.
free.
I want to say we
Yeah,
had
they paid for
like,
that, yeah.
Then you got a monthly
it
charge.
was about like
But I mean, if it comes from the
40%
General Assembly,
were
that might be a
willing or
different
were
discussion.
interested in tapping on some level. Some were no's, some didn't respond too.
Yeah.
But I want to say it was somewhere in we didn't hit that, I think we
It
wanted
wasn't a big-
50%.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And we didn't hit that threshold, I know.
I've got the file.
Yeah, so we can dig back in the file and see what exactly the response was. And again, some of them we couldn't get a hold of, and we did everything we could.
So maybe we can base our prioritization off of some of those survey results and whatever we hear back from the health department, but
Yeah,
until then, I think the order that you suggested is good,
okay,
until we get,
yeah, all right.
Because I think you still gotta get the land easement, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
You still gotta get land easement going into South Chase, and
Into South
you might not even
oh,
get
yeah,
that.
right, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't, I need to research this more. I know condemnation is very unpopular, but I don't know if they have authority to get the sewer easement, if that's an option, if someone just says, no, I don't want you to come across my lawn with the sewer. I mean, it's a fairly, I want to say fairly innocuous thing, but all you got to get is somebody who says, you're not paying me enough, or
Right.
whatever.
I know there's a section,
I'm thinking they have condemnation authority to do that, but I'll have to find out.
there's a section off of Glen Springs.
Yeah,
It's actually a roadway that dead ends at the embankment.
Yeah.
Not at.
yeah, that might be where he was
I
talking
don't know
about.
where that connection point.
There's not it sounds like, it's not a super complicated project. I think you might have to do, when they were looking at it, I think like 2 properties on the South Chase side that be impacted. So it's not like you gotta come across 6
Gotcha.
lots but that was my impression, it was like 2 people, if I recall right. And maybe one property owner on the Westville side to come across theirs to connect to the line, the feeder line. So, all right, I'll update that with the LPR information and send that to you and order it, and we can start digging up the other information. But, I wanted to get this back to them, so,
Yeah.
they will be going back into session later this month.
All right.
And we can sure use their help with some of these things. So that was the delegation meetings, and now we know this, I'll set this up with Kai Lauder from Senator Budd's office and Tommy Lauder from Congressman Edwards' office. The next thing, document shredding event and pill drop, of course, I know we've talked a lot about this. Again, that's coming up April 20th. It'll be in the south parking lot from 9 to noon. We'll have the police department out there with the medication turn-in, or pill drop, we call it, and we'll have a shred truck out there for the public to come up with their, and I'll do a call on it. We're gonna put that sign up. We might get, I think we were looking at maybe getting another one up at the intersection of Old Cane Creek here and Fanning Bridge, and then do the one up at Fanning Bridge and 25. But it's been really well used, nice turnout for
Yeah.
that, so 9 to noon on Saturday the 20th. And I'll do one of those blackboard calls too to get the word out, and we'll do, Facebook, social media, website. The spring litter sweep, that's, the official time for that, April 13th to the 27th, that DOT promotes. We'll do a call. I'll have to see how much materials we have in, but typically when we've put a call out to ask people to participate, we'll give them, anyone who wants to do that, some streets to do the litter sweep and provide the garbage bags and like safety vests. And that's, something to do to facilitate. And then we'll pick up the garbage once we know what streets they're on. Public Works will do that. So I'll send something out here soon because that's coming up real quick. And budget process, not really any updates from last week other than we're getting close to finalizing our expense estimates or requests. Revenues we're working on right now. I'm hoping by middle of this month, I should have a pretty good idea what our total revenue estimates are. The last kind of big one I'm waiting for is from the county and the values. We'll get another one about the middle of the month from the assessor. Heather's been calculating a bunch of our other state shared revenues, so we should be able to have that together pretty quickly here. And then, like I said, I put the goals to have a kind of draft recommended or balanced budget, at least at that point, towards the end of this month. And so I can give you an idea on that. And again, my goal is to do this without a rate increase, if, we can do that. And the big, implementing the paying classification stuff will be the biggest item in there. So, we have some good things going for us. We had some kind of one-time stuff last year that was capital related, so that brings our base down a little bit. Revenues are good. Sales tax is the biggest concern right now. We may actually be less a little bit than what we've budgeted the current year, but if property tax and our other big ones are in decent shape, we should be okay. So, that's all I got.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I had one other thing. I was looking at my last week's, thank you, the Crown Castle, the small cell wireless stuff. I emailed y'all, I heard from Ann Brooks from Crown Castle Thursday, she called, and I emailed y'all Friday. They have finalized the 6 nodes, which would be a location where a small cell facility would go up in town that are on DOT roads. Most of it, I remember, was up in the kind of northwest corner, so like Rutledge, Underwood was mostly it was on. There might have been one on Rutledge Road. The one that's, created the most stir or buzz is obviously the Windsor Forest one, and that's still not determined. I was hoping they were going to say where on Fanning Bridge Road that they were looking to do it, and she's saying they're still probably a month away from giving us some idea what the options are on Fanning Bridge Road for the one off of Windsor Forest. But I think they're still trying to keep it out of Windsor for us, so.
Okay.
It certainly seems like they're attempting to do that or working to do it. What, I don't have the map. As soon as I get the map, she wanted to proof something with the project person. I'll share that with you so you can see where they're gonna go, the proposed ones. Some of them might be actually outside the town limits, but, so just so you know. Yeah, and that's all I had.
Okay.
Jim, thanks again.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering, I saw they were working on Snowball Lane now.
Oh, yeah.
No surprises on that so far? Or have we-
We had one surprise on it, well, it's not a big surprise, like something
Expectation.
totally unforeseen. They were expecting a chance of tree debris in there. And guess what? It isn't. They just found that out Friday.
Okay.
And today, Jabo Lake called me, and they have got to the extent of where it is, or the bottom of it. It was about 8 feet deep at that time of tree debris. It's not along the whole street, it's in one section. That was something that they thought there could be a chance, because the prior original builder of that whole area was known to do that, put that in some areas. So, it could be in the $10,000 to $15,000 additional, but by the time you undercut, so putting the fill in and then the asphalt, but they think they've hit the extent of it, so. And I don't anticipate that on continuum, but, we build contingency into this, so but there'll be a change order likely on it, but yeah, we just found that out, but a good question, other than that, it should be smooth on Snowball, and I imagine on continuum. So.
Anything more from council? All right, do we have a motion to enter closed session for contractual matters?
Make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we're in closed session.
It's cold in here.
Yeah, it's cold. I'm cold now.
big bowl of hot soup.
Me too. All right, you ready to?
Yeah,
Good.
we're good.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn? Any motion? All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Walk back on.